Today, we are going to be talking about human trafficking and the impact it's having on our kids, and also what laws are being passed that we as voters allowed to happen. I really hope you stay tuned, because not only are we going to talk about it, you're going to see pictures of actual victims. You're going to see pictures of people that have been prosecuted. And we're going to talk about it in a real way. If you're not afraid to watch, I dare you.
Welcome to the Powerhouse Podcast, presented to you by Sac Life TV. Here's your host, Pastor Robert Jones.
Hello, I'm Robert Jones, and welcome to Powerhouse Podcast. Today, we have Sergeant Nate Grgich with us, and we're going to be talking about modern-day slavery in California, brought to you by the California voters. But before we get into that, we would like to say hello to Joanne.
Hi, everybody.
It's good to have you, as always. Sergeant Nate Grgich, I just want to say thank you for being here. And tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, your experience, and etc.
So I'm the supervisor for the Special Investigations Bureau of the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office. What we do in our unit is we actually investigate human trafficking. And I should explain something. I have a face for radio, and that's why I have to be blacked out. Actually, because of what we do undercover, I have asked for my face not to be shown. Hence the blurry vision on the TV screens. Part of what we do, though, in our unit is we actually investigate human trafficking and the effects that it has on not only the victims, but also our community. And luckily enough, I've been able to do so. I've been working for the Sheriff's Office for 22 years. I work for Sheriff Cooper, who by far and away is the best sheriff we've had in a very, very, very long time.
Well, we're going to jump right into it because we have a lot to cover in this episode. You've been kind enough to bring a slide presentation of what's going on in our county. I just want to preface this that this is graphic, but if it makes you squirm, this is reality, ladies and gentlemen. We can stick our head in the sand all we want, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And so part of the realization is saying this is what's happening and actually seeing it with your eyes. So we're going to be going through a slide presentation. I'm going to hand this over to Sergeant Nate, and he's going to take us through it. We'll be putting some data up in front of you and some pictures. And do not turn the television off because you're squeamish. You need to watch this. You need to listen to this because this is controlled by us voters. We, the voters of California, passed a proposition that is allowing this to happen currently. So you need to stay tuned and watch this and listen to this to understand it completely. So, Sergeant Nate, take us through it.
So, and thank you for advising about the graphic content. It gets worse as we go on, and so I do encourage the viewers to continue to watch. And then we'll talk about something that happened 2 nights ago where 4 juveniles were rescued by our deputies and then are investigated by our team. And we'll kind of talk about some of those things. So we got a lot to cover. So if we can, we're going to talk about human trafficking. One of the things to notice about human trafficking is that the Sound of Freedom brought a lot of awareness to what is happening around the world. But what a lot of people do not realize is this is happening in our own backyards. And this affects not only the people, but the businesses, the environment, the sheer fact of what is happening is not done in the dark anymore. It's happening right now. Matter of fact, on the way in, I drove through Watt Avenue and I saw 2 prostitutes that were out there actively trying to engage in sex acts that were on the street, and it's 11 o'clock in the daytime. So if we can, we'll go to the next slide. So one of the things that we know this is the new criminal currency. We equate this a lot to methamphetamine sales of the 90s and the early 2000s and so forth before it was basically decriminalized. Methamphetamine sales, to buy a pound of methamphetamine is roughly $2,500. So the street value of that is roughly $7,800 based on today's prices. One of the things that happens with that, though, is that there's always a risk. There's a risk to the seller who is actually engaging in the sales of narcotics and methamphetamine on the streets, that if you get out of your product or whatever, if the police stop you, you're going to lose that product. profit roughly for a pound of methamphetamine, and that they're doing it constantly for the year, they're roughly $276,000 for a year. That's also tax-free. What we also did, though, was we ran numbers for what the average cost of a human being would be per one of these pimps. And so what we did was the startup cost is $0 for these pimps, and that's what they are, is they're pimps. There's an average between $500 and $1,000 a day earnings that is required per woman or girl by the pimps per day. So in that sense, you're earning, say, and what we did is we ran numbers for 3 girls. So it's upwards of $3,000 per day. If we're on the low end of that, we're at $547,000 for 3 women, if at the $500 mark. An average right now is about $1,000 demand from the pimps per girl. You're roughly over $1 million, tax-free. It is a $150 billion industry worldwide. And that $150 billion is for the enslavement of women and men throughout the world. Mm-hmm. And so we're seeing that. If we could go to the next slide. Sacramento is one of the key hubs in the nation for human trafficking, which is mind-boggling because it's Sacramento, California. And unfortunately, what has happened is that this has been kept quiet for a very, very long time.
By who?
By people who want to hide it. The people who turn a blind eye. The people who do not want to actively see that this is a problem. And luckily with Sheriff Cooper, one of the things he's done is he's brought it right to the front.
Ooh, yes, he has.
And said, hey, we're not going to stand for this any longer. We're not going to allow the victims to continue to be victims, and we're going to step up. And we're going to stand in the gap. Much unfortunately to the public's disgruntledness, he has taken a beating for all of the things he's posted online, for the activities that his detectives, the Special Investigations Bureau and all of the detectives and deputies who work these types of things, he's taken a beating for it in the media, in the public, and so forth, because there's an outcry because he's bringing it to the front. So Sacramento, Oakland, San Francisco, San Jose, Fresno, Bakersfield, Los Angeles, and San Diego are some of the active blades that we have in the state of California.
Explain what a blade is to him.
So a blade used to be called the stroll, where the prostitutes would then walk out onto the actual street corners and attempt to sell themselves.
So it is the area that they
Yes.
that they offer themselves up
Absolutely.
to the public.
Yeah. Sacramento County, we have 2 active blades. One is in South Sacramento on Stockton Boulevard, and the other is on Watt Avenue. That's not a secret to anybody. No one's going to be shocked to see that or hear those be brought up. What people are shocked to hear about is really the age. Last night, or I'm sorry, well, it was yesterday morning because our team was out, we recovered 4 juveniles from our blade in South Sacramento, and 2 girls in the South Sac and 2 girls in the North Sac. And the North Sac blade actually had a pimp that was also with the 2 girls that we arrested right then and there. Our patrol officers contacted these women. They noticed that they looked underage. They contacted them to verify if they were okay, to basically do a welfare check to make sure. And then it came out that they were 2 16-year-olds, a 17-year-old, and a 13-year-old.
Good Lord.
And so those numbers right there are shocking to so many people, but to us, that's commonplace.
That's my daughter's age, bro.
Yeah. It's what we took into account is there are also these sex work ads that are posted on dozens of active sex work sites. In the state of California, since 2004, there has been 28 million ads posted in the state of California alone. That's just the state of California. And that right there should be a staggering number to a lot of people, that we're losing control of our women. And we're losing control of them to be able to say, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to stay safe. And we have turned them over to the streets, unfortunately.
Yeah, we're basically, what we're doing is we're normalizing selling your body. Mm-hmm. So, I got a question for you. Where under the sun is now? Where's the National Organization of Women? Where's the feminist? Where are all these women that are for women's rights, and yet they're allowing our young women to be sold? And what's going on? I mean, do you get anything with that? I mean, and I mean, I'm sorry. This is an emotional topic for me, and I may say some things that you guys don't like, and get over it. Because you know what? Until we start getting outraged, you guys, this is going to continue. It's going to continue. And we as voters voted for a proposition that allows underage sex trafficking. Bro, I'm sorry. Where are these organizations?
They're attacking the sheriff. That's what they're doing.
There you go. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, let's attack the sheriff, and let's not attack the pimps that are actually selling the women and turning them into a piece of meat. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Incredible. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, and I think that is a very big thing to bring up, is that we're so concerned about the feelings of the perpetrators and the sex buyers that we're not taking into account the victims. And there's, instead of, as our sheriff tries to bring awareness constantly, and he got lambasted in the media for posting images of underage girls, which, by the way, was fully legal and fully covered by all the social media sites that they deemed it was not inappropriate, because it wasn't. But he brought forward 4 images of young women who were out there selling themselves, who we know as from our unit to be juveniles, and he said this has got to stop. And instead of them going, absolutely, we're going to take this to the mattresses, we're going to fight this, we're going to do this, instead they accused him of re-victimizing the victims, and that's not what he's doing. He's trying to actively fight against a social norm to just say, well, hey, we don't want to see those ugly pictures. And now what we're doing is we're showing the ugly pictures, because this is what needs to be shown for people to actually take effect, to actually start making some change. So if we could go to the next slide here. So this was actually put together by the Community Against Sexual Harm, and also California State Institute for Social Research. They found that 94.3% of the victims were females. And then they went into the actual demographics, and overwhelmingly 47.5% of the victims were black females, followed then by white females, then Latino, and then mixed race, and then so forth. They also found that there was 13,079 victims in California, or in Sacramento alone. They also said that basically for every one person that reported being a victim, there was another 11 behind it that were unreported.
Wow.
So I'm not a mathematician, but that's a lot of victims out there who are not saying anything, who are not bringing this up, who are not talking about this, because they're embarrassed, they feel shame, and I don't think they feel support. And that's what we're here to try to change. If we go if we continue on, and that was, by the way, between 2015 and 2020.
This is something that I just want to bring up. I opened the show by saying something very controversial. Modern day slavery in California, brought to you by the California voters. Mm-hmm. So when you have 47% of the girls being sex trafficked, 47.5 are black. The next is 12. What we're saying is, to me, this is how I see it. Now look, I got an issue, okay? I got an issue because my church is very diverse. We look like the United Nations, okay? And so we're very diverse. We have a goddaughter, black, a son-in-law, black. We have, I was raised in a 12,000 member church from age 3 to 11. In Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 90% were black. So for me, I when I see numbers like that, I say straight up, that is you talking about oppression, and we're passing laws that oppress. If we do any kind of law that oppresses any other culture like this is oppressing them, people would be outraged. We'd be outraged, but now we just kind of pass it off. Why? Because we're okay with it. We're okay with it. We're okay if 47.5% of the kids are black. I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with that, Sergeant.
And neither are we.
And
I think that so many people hear these stories and they're just like, this can't happen in California. This happens, and I saw the movie Sound of Freedom, and that was a very impactful movie, and it rose some awareness of what we're doing. But this is happening in Sacramento. And so the next video that we're going to show is actually one off of Stockton Boulevard. that this young woman who is trying to actively walk away from a pimp, a sex trafficker, who is there. This is, I believe this was about midnight. No, I'm sorry, it was 11 o'clock, just before midnight. Now, one of the things that we always bring to people's attention is look at the background. There are cars driving by. And some of these people are there to mind their own business, but no one called the police during this whole thing. No one rose any sort of concern that this was actively happening. And so what you're going to see is this young lady is going to try to escape. She's trying to walk away faster. She's walking, by the way, in 4 to 6 inch heels to try to escape. And this is what happens.
And this is footage that's being taken and documenting this. Mm-hmm. That's the thing that's so troubling to me. Here they come.
There's cars stopped and they're backing up, trying to see what's going on.
He's got her by the hair of the head.
Mm-hmm. The other guy's going to open the car door. Notice there's a street sweeper who's watching what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Tosses a human being in the back of a car and then takes off. And everybody continues like life is just fine.
Let that image sink in there a little bit, folks. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be back, and we're going to talk more. We got more statistics, more video. Stay tuned. We would like to thank Mosley Collins for sponsoring Powerhouse Podcast. And if you are in need of any legal help, please dial 916-444-4444. All fours for legal help. Thank you, Mosley, for your support.
Sac Life TV is proud to sponsor the Powerhouse Podcast with Pastor Robert Jones. If you'd like to be a sponsor, please contact us at info@saclife.tv.
Are you looking for substance in your podcasts? Look no further. Introducing the Powerhouse Podcast. Join us every week as we delve into politics, religion, entertainment, and education. Don't miss out. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform and be part of the Powerhouse Podcast community. For more information, visit our website, powerhousepodcast.net.
Hello and welcome back. I'm your host, Robert Jones. You're here with Powerhouse Podcast. We would like to say a special thank you to Mosley Collins for being our sponsor. We appreciate your partnering with us, Mosley. Love your brother. Also, if you need any kind of legal help, please contact Mosley Collins, 916 all fours for legal help. On the show today, we have Sergeant Nate with us. He is blurred out because he does work undercover in sex trafficking, so you won't see his face, but you'll hear his voice. We're currently in the middle of a slide presentation that is giving you the facts. I made this comment that modern sex-day slavery, modern slavery brought to you by California voters. I said that because there was a proposition passed that is allowing this to happen, and we're going to get to that. But let's keep going. Please continue bringing us the information that you have. We just watched a video where a girl was taken by the hair of the head and thrown in the back of a car. It's a real thing. It's a disturbing thing. Take it away.
So on the next slide, we're actually going to start to see, this is the individual. We blurred out his last name just because we don't want to bring him any more type of attention. But he was arrested for kidnapping for ransom, human trafficking, pandering, domestic violence, and criminal threats. He was sentenced pre-prelim to 11 years, which sounds fantastic. 11 years, we got him off the streets. But because of the guidelines and the sentencing guidelines, that 11 years turned into 3 years because it wasn't deemed a violent felony, it was deemed a serious felony, which means he served 33%, so he's about to get out.
Who defines what's violent and what is?
The state of California actually has guidelines inside our penal code which actually govern and direct that.
Okay.
The scary thing is, though, I would argue that was violent.
You took her by the hair of the head, bro.
Absolutely. And he's going to do 3 years for it. So of those 11 years, he's going to see 3 years. And that to us is not only shocking, but absolutely flooring that you can steal another human being, force her to have sex with other people for money that you collect, and you only do 3 years. I don't think we're setting any sort of standard of punishment or even accountability. And that's what it comes down to, right? Is jail is not the answer. It's not. And the sheriff has talked about jail is not the answer for every situation, but accountability is.
Yes.
And I think that this is just one example. So when we go on to this next one, this is Xavier Collins. Now, Xavier Collins, we actually got last April, we did a large scale operation where we arrested over 103 individuals. One of those individuals we actually rescued from him was a 16-year-old female. And there's going to be some graphic photos. I'll let you know that coming up. But the juvenile spoke to law enforcement about who Collins was and what he was doing. And one of the things that he was doing was he had multiple victims that he was actually running around with. And so he was arrested for human trafficking of a minor by force, human trafficking of a minor, human trafficking of an adult, pimping, pandering of a minor and an adult. And this was a huge case because we found that his network spider-webbed throughout not only Sacramento. And there's a track that these individuals will run. They'll go from Seattle down to Sacramento, down to Fresno, down then to Los Angeles, San Diego, Las Vegas, and then redo that track again. So they're moving these women, these girls throughout the states, and they're constantly doing that. And she was just one of his many. So one of the things that we had going through is this is our victim. She has attempted suicide 3 different times. Her very first time, another detective and I actually went there. I work with some of the best detectives that I've ever had the opportunity to know, who are passionate about this, just to give them a little plug. They're dedicated, motivated. We have an intel analyst who has to do this stuff with us, who are dedicated to seeing this curbed. We know we're not going to stop it. We're Sacramento, but we're trying to put a dent in it. So this young lady tried to commit suicide in the very first one. Detective Fry and I went out and we met her at the hospital. She comes from a family that supports her and loves her, but she got hooked into this by an ex-boyfriend who then turned her out on the streets. She has now had multiple pimps. The last time she tried to commit suicide was actually in Oakland, and she thinks about suicide constantly. And it breaks our heart because as we know these young women, they call us uncle. They when we approach them on the street, even though they've broken the law and they're going to get a citation or whatever it might be, they know us. Oh, hey, I know, you're just doing your job and I'm not supposed to be out here. They get it. Mm-hmm. And we work with advocacy groups that get and know that our sheriff is trying to change the face of what is happening. And we're very fortunate. We work with Family Justice Center, who is amazing, who have advocates that believe in what we do. We have to fight a lot of other advocates who say that we're just re-victimizing the victims, which isn't true. We're trying to drive a wedge, and we'll get into that. But this young lady has gone through it. I believe she's on her 4th or 5th pimp now. Some of the injuries that she had happened to her really, where she was drugged, she was beaten.
Don't turn away from this, guys.
It's only going to get worse.
Don't turn away from this. This is reality. This is what happens when we do nothing. This is what happens. Go ahead.
The 2 on the left of the screen are actually, she took those and was asking for basically help. Took them as documentation, and then the furthest on the right, obviously, we see what happened.
Was that a slash? Did he cut her ear?
Basically got forced into a metal door.
So she got her head slammed into the metal.
Basically.
Okay.
So this young lady, this next young lady is pregnant, as most people can see. She was also one of Xavier Collins' girls. It was his 6-month pregnant girlfriend that he also forced to go work as a sex worker, pregnant, on the Blade. So it's not just young ladies, but there's also pregnant women. And I think that when you have the lone voice in the wilderness crying out that, hey, we need to stop this, we're not just talking about 20-somethings. We're talking about young women who are pregnant, young women who are 13 years old. And the span that goes in between that, it's deplorable.
I don't get it, dude.
This is also another young lady who he tried to force out to work on the blade. She immediately fought against it and said, "I'm not doing that." He then tried to shove her out of a moving vehicle as she was driving. The kind of abrasions on her neck and knee is when she got tossed out of the car, and he tried to choke her with that seatbelt. Another victim of Xavier Collins. This is actually screenshots. So one of the things that we do is we get forensic cell phone data. And that's why it's so important for us to understand what these guys are going through. But he talks about, and I would encourage your listeners to read, because I can't read it for PG-13 and R-rated versions of it. But one of the girls says, "Hey, I'm on my menstrual cycle." And this is, of course, the cleaned up version.
Right.
And he says, "Well, you can perform oral sex. You know what I bought you. Go out and work." And what is really concerning to him is that money that he's holding inside of his hands. He doesn't care about the victims. He doesn't care that she's doesn't want to be out there because she's on her menstrual cycle. He just wants his money. And that's the disturbing part about what is happening. So this is Jacob Reyes and Itzel Medina. This is a husband and wife team who, and everybody's going to be able to read exactly what they're charged with, but never let it be said that there are women that are absolutely involved in the pimping and pandering and trafficking of other women. This is a...
Excuse me, what about for the ones that are just listening to the podcast and not watching? Could you kind of say what it says on here?
The case background is the detectives learned that Reyes trafficked 2 minors, ages 12 and 14, from Sacramento to Oakland to work as sex workers. Reyes sexually assaulted the 14-year-old victim orally and vaginally. Medina rented hotel rooms and cars, aiding Reyes in the sex trafficking of minors across California. Medina was in contact with the 14-year-old victim, organizing financial reimbursements. They were arrested for human trafficking of minors. Sentencing was the following: pending preliminary hearing, facing upwards to 12 to 14 years in state prison and sex offender registration. 12 to 14 years to me is a joke, but anyway.
And this is a husband and wife team that we're doing it, and they have multiple kids together. Talk about more victims. They're just leaving a path of victims behind them. And I think that it brings it up. So this is our 12 and 14-year-old victims. The 12-year-old, it also should be noted, 2 nights ago, which would be, and it worked all the way until yesterday morning at 5 a.m., we were interviewing the 12-year-old who is now 13 because she had re-linked up with another pimp and another sex worker and was out on Watt Avenue attempting again to sell herself. 12 years old, now 13 years old. The good Lord does amazing things, but intervention needs to happen. And their lives are forever changed now because of Itzel Medina and Jacob Reyes. They have forever changed the trajectory of these women's lives.
Kids' lives. Kids.
Yes.
12 and 14, kids' lives.
And the reason why we have it phrased like this is the before picture of these 2 young ladies, and this is the after. This is one of the pictures is on Stockton Boulevard, one's in Oakland in the middle, and then the other one is the now 13-year-old who is in the backseat of a car trying to post ads for sex work. This is their now new life. So we can actually see this. Again, another forensic dump of the cell phone. In the middle is an actual firearm that is threatening multiple people that the juvenile has issues with because she has now had access to a firearm because she is involved in the sex working and so forth. And she's actually helping to recruit other young ladies for this pimp. And on the far right is the actual shirt and jacket that he was wearing the first night. There's drugs, a firearm, and a couple $100 worth of stuff. That was all those, by the way. That loaded firearm, the methamphetamine, and the fentanyl was all in reach of his children who were ages 2 to 6 years old that were in the house when we actually stopped and finally found him. So this is the criminal wake in his path. And his kids, by the way, are victims as well.
Oh, sure.
They are going to have to deal with this as well. And his parents who have to raise his children because he fell through, he ran girls. So some of the other things that we wanted to bring up is this case right here, and this is incredibly graphic, and it is helpful to understand we are not bringing any sort of drama to this, but this is the actual case, and Pastor, if you wouldn't mind reading that.
Joanne, do you have that? Why don't you read it there? I'll tell you what, before we do that, let's take a quick break, and then let's come right back. And this is going to be the most shocking you've seen. I'm just telling you right now. I've seen this already. This is going to be the most shocking you've seen, and it's going to put all of our hearts in check. I'm just saying. So please stay tuned, and we'll be right back. We would like to thank Mosley Collins for sponsoring Powerhouse Podcast. And if you are in need of any legal help, please dial 916-444-4444. All fours for legal help. Thank you, Mosley, for your support.
Sac Life TV is proud to sponsor the Powerhouse Podcast with Pastor Robert Jones. If you'd like to be a sponsor, please contact us at info@saclife.tv.
Are you looking for substance in your podcasts? Look no further. Introducing the Powerhouse Podcast. Join us every week as we delve into politics, religion, entertainment, and education. Don't miss out. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform and be part of the Powerhouse Podcast community. For more information, visit our website, powerhousepodcast.net.
Hello and welcome back to Powerhouse Podcast. I'm your host, Robert Jones. Forgive me if I'm not my perky self, but we're talking about a pretty heavy subject here that's a very serious matter. We're talking about some of the kids that have been trafficked, and we have another example of that.
And this by far and away is the most shocking. And it's understandable that a lot of people will want to avert their eyes, especially, and Joanne's going to read the actual case background and so forth. Our detectives have to understand, have to investigate, have to view images like this on a day-to-day basis. And I believe they are some of the most dedicated individuals that I have ever been able to work with. And our sheriff entrusts them to investigate these and to stop this. So I will ask Joanne if she could please read the background for this case.
This is the case background for Ray C. The victim was found with multiple knife lacerations and burn marks, including the genital region. The victim reported that Ray heated hot utensils on a stovetop burner. Ray controlled the victim's medically required insulin, giving more or less than the doctor prescribed. The victim reported going into a diabetic coma or shock. Ray would force the victim to drink laxatives when he suspected that she had hidden money rectally. Ray used a steak knife and slashed the victim's anus, later tied up the victim with duct tape and HDMI cables, and left her on a deflated mattress where she lay in her feces. Ray would sodomize the victim as punishment without lubrication, then force the victim to orally copulate him with feces on his penis. He's arrested for torture, kidnapping for ransom, human trafficking, pimping, pandering, assault with a deadly weapon, criminal threats, and domestic violence. Sentencing was facing life without possibility of parole in a state prison and sex offender registration.
So she was luckily able to escape because he fell asleep and she ran. She was found by a neighbor immediately. They transported her to the hospital. And when our detectives got there, it sounded Hollywood. And then as they start diving into her statement and they start seeing the lacerations and so forth, they start realizing that this is not Hollywood. This guy has been torturing her for so long. And these are some of the images, only a few, because some of the images are so vile that you can't, and it makes you almost want to throw up. Our lead detective.
How old is this gal?
She was early 20s.
Early 20s, okay. You're still a kid.
Yeah, and our detective still gets very emotional when he talks about this because the blood, sweat, and tears that he poured into this case, because it was forever changing, not only in his heart, but also in his mind of what these victims go through. Mm. And this is one of the things that we wanted to show people because so many people think of Pretty Woman. when they think of, oh, she's on the street corner, she's selling herself. This is not Bel Air, this is not a penthouse. This is what happens on the streets. If these pimps do not get what they want, and he believed she was hiding money rectally, then they're going to torture them.
No.
And they do not care if they die. There is no human value placed on these women's lives.
Well, there's no cost, right? You said it earlier. There is no investment because they'll just go get another girl.
Yes.
Not a big deal.
And one of the things that this happened last Monday is he actually took a deal for 31 years to life, which is great. But our detectives want to go to trial to explain it to a jury of 12 people. This is actually what happens. Our detectives love going to court. The reason why is put me on the stand and let me explain for the victim who can't explain it the way I can because she's too close to it. Let me be the voice that's crying out for them. And that is what we're trying to do. And as we stream through other pictures with this is the steak knives that he used. This was the bucket he made her defecate in. And then ultimately, when he fell asleep, that was the mattress that she was forced to sleep on.
So there's the mattress deflated so that when she would defecate, he could see if there was cash.
Yes.
So that's actually feces. So are we saying that, do you guys understand that, sex trafficking is like you said, not Pretty Woman?
Right.
And that's the thing I have a problem with Hollywood. They glamorize it, Oh, she got the man at the end and everything is wonderful. That's a joke. But that's what they do, right?
And this is a before and after picture. She was forced to take a video by the suspect on her phone and basically saying and demoralizing herself because she didn't make enough money for him. So he beat her until he was tired. And then made her stand in a cold shower and basically admit, I didn't do my daddy's work well enough. And that's what they call them. And this is what we see constantly. And that is why our sheriff, who's incredibly passionate about this, that's why the detectives I get to work with day in and day out, our intelligence analysts, and the people we come in contact with, all the way to our forensic people who download these phones, are passionate about putting these people where they cannot hurt other victims. Unfortunately, though, that's not always the case with the laws that are made.
So let's talk about the law. So I made a really bold comment that, modern day slavery in California brought to you by California voters. So what did I mean by that? So there was a law passed, and it was, go ahead.
Which one?
Okay, well, let's start with 47.
Okay.
I retract that. What law was it? You tell me, what law was it that said you can no longer go up to a minor and say, take them off the streets for sex trafficking?
So one of the big laws, and actually Sheriff Cooper, when he was in the legislature, actually spoke very strongly against this and said, hey, they decriminalized childhood prostitution.
You hear that? You guys, you listen to that? Who's they?
The legislature basically said, hey, and there was bills passed, and again, I wasn't there. Sheriff Cooper, he can speak to all of that stuff. But one of the things is by decriminalizing childhood prostitution, we don't have any teeth anymore. And it took us down to this spot where we're like, okay, well, now we have to become inventive to protect juveniles from this type of interaction. And so what it has done is empowered the pimps. And stuff that we see on the phones all the time is that the pimps will say, hey, they're not after you, they're after me. You go out there and you keep it together and you keep your mouth shut, everything's going to be fine. They want me, they don't want you. And they tell these women this because we have switched to this victim-centered approach where every one of these girls is an absolute victim. And we believe that there are countless victims out there. But some of these girls have actually turned the opposite, and now they're starting to run these other young ladies, especially juveniles. Juveniles are so underreported because not only is it shame, but it's also the fact that what are they going to say? What are they going to do? Law enforcement, the other night, we have 4 deputies, 2 north and 2 south, go up to these young ladies and they're like, you look too young to be out here. We're gonna talk to you, just to verify that they're okay, almost a welfare check. They find out immediately, they go, yeah, we're out here working. How old are you? Well, I'm this age, because they're never their actual age. They're always, I'm 18. No. You're not 18. Right. They dive into it and they find out 13, 16, and 17. And those deputies have to try to digest that most of us have kids, and we have kids that age.
Yeah.
that how am I talking to a 13-year-old who is out here working as a sex worker about stuff that she should have no clue what we're talking about? And to put that into perspective, those deputies, the stress that they're forced to endure because of that, now talking to a juvenile about what is going on to keep them safe, where the juveniles don't want to cooperate because they believe if they can just keep it quiet, eventually you'll move on and I'll go back to my pimp who will keep me safe.
Because the people you voted for passed a law that decriminalized it. And by decriminalizing it, now law enforcement can't take these kids off the street, put them in places to where they are protected from pimps. So you, the voter of California, voted for these people to be in legislature and in the Senate to make laws where our kids are enslaved in modern day slavery. That's what I meant by that. And it is absolutely asinine and ignorant if we, as voters, do not take this seriously. I mean, I have kids, and for me, this enrages me, bro. It enrages me. I've got a house full of 15, 16-year-old girls that come over and hang out with my daughter. And I think of this, and they could be a statistic, because guess what? Guess what? 2 of the 3 that come over are black. You know, they're a statistic. Now, they have fathers in their home, and they have a good family life, but they're part of the statistic.
And that's one of the things that we're trying to bring so much awareness, and that is why our sheriff is so passionate about this, is because if we can get people to actually look at PowerPoints like what we did, just those slides, to where they read and understand what is being actually done on the streets, hopefully it inspires them to start talking to people about how do we step in. And that's one of the things with, it doesn't matter which faith group that you come from, we got to step up together. Mm-hmm. We have to be able to bring awareness, to tell people, hey, we're not going to stand for this any longer. Mm-hmm. And our sheriff has been very vocal about homelessness, about retail theft, and about human trafficking, because it together is going to bring down the society of Sacramento and the ones around. And hopefully we can start to inspire a change. And what we need to start changing is that people understand what it actually is like to live as an underage prostitute or as an adult prostitute who is forced into this stuff. These women eventually do not want to do this. And the average age span that they live, the average length of time, is 7 to 10 years. That means that our 12-year-old who started could be dead before she's 20 years old if she continues down this life. If someone doesn't grab hold of her, and that's where people like the Family Justice Center who step in and try to work with all of our victims and say, hey, we're here to help you, we want to work with you. We need those people to step up and understand that sometimes we have to be that kind of the sheepdog, where we are out there, and sometimes what we do, you're not going to like, but we're trying to affect a change in the community. And unfortunately, there's not too many people that are willing to step up. A lot are turning the blind eye.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Here's what you're fighting against. You know, here's what you're fighting against is that you've got society saying you cops are racist because you're arresting all these brown people. When in reality, the brown people are they're the ones that's being enslaved. They're the ones that's being targeted. You know, and that's the thing for me that drives me insane is that what you're doing is trying to protect, but how it's verbalized is no, you're being racist. That's I have no patience for that stuff. It's asinine. It's like the abortion issue. You know, people talk about abortion and things like that. What people don't understand is the black community would be doubled if it wasn't for abortion. They're the most aborted babies are black babies. You know, and so it's like when people make comments and they really don't understand. And when I see this, it drives me insane. Joanne, do you have something for us?
So when I was in my maybe early 20s, I was driving down the street and some guy was telling me to pull over because he wanted to talk to me. And I was just like, no, I'm not gonna pull over. Obviously, I don't know who you are. I'm not gonna get out of my car, all that, right? And so my question is, are there programs available to educate our young girls? And how do you educate them
That's such a fair question, and I don't have the perfect response. One of the things that the sheriff is actually talking about doing is putting on a symposium that is about education and talking to the community about safeguarding our children. Before the dawn of social media, and even before COVID, really, we had this kind of like, well, this is only happening in this area. And what is happening now is we're seeing more people get recruited from Instagram, from all of these social media platforms and so forth. And what people don't understand is if you are not going and being an active participant in your child's life, you're going to lose them.
Yeah.
And I have 5 kids, and it scares me. My oldest is what is she, a junior now at Cal Poly, but it still concerns me that she could be recruited. And I have a 13-year-old daughter, and then I have 3 sons between the ages of 18 and 8. Yeah, I know how that happens. But one of the things is that we are so active and involved in our kids' lives that they don't have the opportunity to get recruited, to be sought out, and so forth. And more parents need to step in the gap and say, I'm going to be a parent. I'm not just going to be someone who just allows you to do whatever. There's state laws now that if you do not have access to your child's phone and you cannot get into it, you do not have the right, even though you pay for it, to have access to the data. And most parents, when we've come and we've talked to them, they say, hey, I'm worried that my child's being, trafficked or targeted. We say, okay, well, how do you know this? And they're acting weird, they're not, the same. I want you to go through their cell phone. And one of the things we will ask is, what's the child's cell phone's password? When's the last time you went in? And if they say, hey, I don't know the password, I never go through it, or I haven't been through it in 6-8 months, you as a parent do not have the right to give it to law enforcement and say, please go through that phone, because you are not an authorized user anymore, even though you pay for it. And
Because the what? The law?
The law.
Who makes the law?
I'm not going to answer that. I think we all know.
Oh, Lord.
But that is one of the things with parents need to understand. Your kids are being targeted just as much as anybody else's. And it's not always South Sacramento. We have victims from Lincoln, from Orangevale, from Rockland, from Arden Arcade area. It is all over the place. These guys know no bounds, and what they try to do is they replace the love that they're missing at home with the, hey, you're really pretty, I want to take you out, I want to buy you things. They try to sweet talk them, and after a while, that's when they start to work into, well, I think if you really love me, you would go out and work. And if the woman says, or the girl says no, well, there's ways to deal with that.
Well, we have to wrap up, unfortunately, for time, but I think we could go half a day on this stuff. But there are some things that we can do. We can write our congressman, governor, police chiefs, mayors, etc., city councils. I'm gonna work with Sergeant Nate on drafting a letter, and I'm gonna be putting it on our powerhousepodcast.net website. You're gonna be able to download that letter, sign, and we're gonna have a list of who to send it to, because that's one way we do. The other thing is to hold some symposiums. So if you're out there, you're listening, you're watching, and you go, you know what, I have a big church, or I have a big venue of this sort, and I would love to have the sheriff come. I'd love to have Sergeant Nate come. I would love to invite politicians and talk about this and bring awareness to your community, because that's what it's going to take. Then please contact us at powerhousepodcast.net, and we want to talk to you. Well, Sergeant Nate, tongue-in-cheek, thank you for coming, even though it did rile me up, and I am a little nauseated. I probably won't eat lunch, but it's real. It's out there. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the work you do. Thank you, detectives, for the work they do, and thank God we're not listening to some idiots that say we need to defund you guys. So
We appreciate
we support in this, and we want to continue to get kids off the street any way we can, and hopefully we'll start voting in a way that frees you up to start protecting kids.
Thank you.
In a deeper way. So thank you once again for being a part of Powerhouse Podcast. And if this did not shock you, then I don't think we can shock you. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Powerhouse Podcast. If today's conversation resonated with you, remember to subscribe, rate, and review us on your preferred podcast platform. Your feedback helps us in our mission to engage in deep conversations that impact mindsets and create a practice of introspection. Do you have an idea or a topic for a show? Message us at php@saclife.tv. Remember, your voice matters, and together we have the power to influence positive change in our world.